Welcome to the Metta Hour podcast with Sharon Salzberg, where Buddhist wisdom meets everyday life. This podcast is brought to you by the Be Here Now Network. If you're interested in supporting this podcast, visit www.BeHereNowNetwork.com/Sharon. Enjoy listening.
Hi, I'm Sharon Salzberg, and I'm so happy to be sitting down today with Congressman Tim Ryan for the second half of our conversation for my Real Love podcast series. For those of you just tuning in for the first time, Congressman Ryan currently serves in the U.S. Congress representing Ohio's 13th District. He's been reelected 7 times since originally being elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 2002. Congressman Ryan serves as a member of the powerful House Appropriations Committee and is co-chairman of the Congressional Manufacturing Caucus. In 2012, he published a wonderful book called A Mindful Nation, a book that I really love. We're recording today in the heart of Washington, D.C., in the Congressional Office Building. You may occasionally be hearing the sounds of construction going on just outside. And to Congressman Ryan, it's such an honor to be here with you. So I was wondering, are you still on a committee dealing with addiction?
Yes. Yeah. Doing a lot of addiction stuff. So I co-chair a caucus that's the Addiction Treatment and Recovery Caucus. And Ohio is the worst state with opiate addiction. In fact, last week we had in one night like 18 or 19 overdoses and 3 people died, and it's a mess. It's terrible.
It's terrible everywhere.
Yeah.
It's terrible in Massachusetts. It's terrible everywhere.
Yeah.
And so, of course, we can think of addiction as a kind of spiritual crisis. And not only does it seem there's an economic crisis going on in this country and racial crisis and all kinds of things, but there's a spiritual crisis that so many people are going through. And we're looking for a sense of community. We're looking for some sense of worth, something like that. And this has been a terrible turn, into those drugs.
Yeah. I remember when I first got into the state Senate, I was 26 or 27 years old, and a steel mill closed down, copper weld steel, and then it evolved into a couple other. But it closed down. It was ready to close down, and the union was trying to buy the facility through what's called an ESOP, an employee-owned. So I go to this... it's an old Packard music hall, the Packard brothers who did the car and all that stuff. And they're from Warren, Ohio. So anyway, there's this big, beautiful music hall. And the union was in there, and there were about 2,000 families. And the union guys were with some professor from Kent State up on stage trying to explain what does an employee-owned facility look like. You use pension money to buy it and all this stuff. And I remember there was a guy who walked up to one of the microphones there. And I was just kind of in the back, brand new state senator. And I just remember him saying, we have got to do something. I've got kids, I got a mortgage, all that. And he said, and that's that I go and I run the continuous caster machine. That's my machine. He said, that's mine. He's like almost breaking down. That's my machine. And that's the purpose, like the dignity of work. Right, it's like, it doesn't matter if you're a meditation teacher, or a congressman, or a steel worker. It's like you find dignity in work, providing for your family. And even that's my machine. That was a multi-million-dollar machine. It wasn't quite his machine, but he ran it, and that was his. And he lost that. And I think that's the crisis that you see happening in Ohio, in the South, in a lot of most places now in the country, unfortunately. That lack of purpose, not enough work out there that really helps you feel dignified. And that's the crisis we're dealing with.
And maybe we don't have a sense of interdependence enough, because something I do if I go into an organization or a company, and a question I ask is, how many other people have to be doing their jobs well for you to do your job well? Because we feel so isolated. But really, that surgeon is counting on the housekeeper for that operating theater. And
Absolutely.
Everybody has this kind of standard of excellence.
Yeah. A buddy of mine, a congressman from Louisiana, told this story the other day. they have a lot of famous restaurants in New Orleans, and the top chef he was talking with of one of the local restaurants was saying how the most important person in the kitchen is the dishwasher. And he said, well, what do you mean the dishwasher? You're the celebrity chef. And, and he said, I can tell from what the dishwasher tells me what dinners are cooked properly, what people are eating. They're eating their peas, they're not eating their peas, because of what the dishwasher. So that's the most important person in my kitchen.
Fabulous.
And it shows that interconnectedness, that we are all connected. And right now, even though we've got machines and all this stuff, we seem more disconnected than ever before. And I think a lot of it comes from a lack of respect. It's like, well, you're a teacher, you're in the terrorist organization. Well, wait a minute. I know a lot of teachers, and maybe not all of them are good, but they're not terrorists. They're still teaching kids. And it's just that lack of respect for people that are out, trying to do the work, the people who work for the city, who make the sewers run and the water come on. And, I get fascinated every time I go to New York City and I'm like, how does the water even go on in this town? How can I pick one of these buildings, go up to the 10th floor and turn the spigot on and the water comes on? How does that even happen? It's a miracle.
How does anything happen there?
Yeah, exactly. And it's
That's true.
It is that interdependence and that respect for the people that you don't always see doing their job.
Yeah.
And that's all people want. They want a job and they want to be able to do it and they want to get paid a fair wage. And that's not where we're at today. And that's why we're seeing such high levels of anxiety.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's partly a role for mindfulness too, right? Because how do we start noticing the things we're overlooking, and how do we find one another again? And there's certain parts of the social fabric that are just so different, like that book, which is so great, even just its title, Bowling Alone, about the breakdown of bowling leagues and how the ways we used to come together in community, it's just not happening so much anymore. Maybe church or maybe synagogue, but not to the same extent, right? And so how do
Lions
we find
Club,
each other?
Kiwanis, American Legion. I mean, go through the list of those institutions, unions that held society together. Yeah. And a lot of it, what I think the mindfulness comes in, is people don't feel like anyone sees them. Yeah. Yeah. Do you see what I'm going through here? And I think, not to get political, but I think that's how Donald Trump won. He made people who haven't been seen in a while feel at least seen. I don't know if they completely believed everything he was saying, but they felt like somebody saw him. And it could have been BS. Probably was, in my opinion, but that's my opinion. Yeah. But they felt that somebody saw them. And somebody heard them and was trying to speak for them. And I think that's important, because that's really what we've lost. We've moved into the suburbs and drive around poverty, drive around a lot of the problems that we have in society. And, it's part of the problem. I think if we're going to have a new version of America, it's going to start with, we got to start seeing each other. Yeah.
That's fabulous. I mean, it's interestingly enough, it's one of the ways I define love in my book, Real Love, because I talk about a dream I had where I was teaching at IMS in the dream. And I was at IMS literally and asleep there. And in the dream, I was talking to somebody and they said, why do we love people? And I said in the dream, because they see us. And then I woke up and I thought, that's pretty good.
Better write that down.
That's good. I got that one right. Yeah. It's very hard because maybe we don't see ourselves either that well anymore. So
yeah. Or the real version of yourself. You may see some concocted version that has evolved over time that isn't really you. Yeah. And we see that. And that and that, that does come also from a lack of opportunity. Not always, but the opportunity to grow and we've got a lot of communities where the opportunities aren't there to grow, to find a job you really like. We talk about, man, just live your dream and find
and follow your bliss.
Follow your bliss. Follow your bliss, and Portsmouth, Ohio,
Yeah, it's
where
pretty
people were
privileged.
dropping dead from overdoses left
Yeah.
and right, and
Yeah.
factories have closed, and your social network is in that town. Although you may not be completely happy. Your babysitters are there, and your mom's in a local nursing home, and something goes wrong, your church will help you. Your social network is there, and so there's no picking up and leaving to go. Go anywhere and follow your bliss.
Yeah.
You got to figure, and that's where these practices come, because you can find some level of happiness right where you are, as our buddy John says.
That's right. It's right where you are. And also, people ask all the time, like, well, isn't mindfulness or meditation practice just kind of self-indulgent, and you're gonna, lie happily on your couch, being happy with your own self, and forget about all these people? But I think it's the cutting edge. It could be the cutting edge if applied appropriately, to finding one another again. And it's not like everybody in the world has to meditate, but at least if one has that kind of skill set and actively uses it, then it's not just la-di-da and having that kind of superficial sense of escape at all. I wish sometimes it was more of an escape. It's like not much of an escape. but I'm so intrigued with that question. It's like right now in the political sphere, I meet so many people who say they either can't stand their own anger anymore. They're just like so angry at what's happened that they're they can't abide that, and they're just in a lot of pain about that, or they feel so hopeless. They just don't know what to do to try to make this a better world, and there's such a sense of stuckness from those people.
Yeah, I get it. It's a hard time to be a citizen today. It's not a lot of conversations, not a lot of problem solving, not a lot of people actually trying to say, okay, you're a Republican, I'm a Democrat. Okay, so there's nothing we agree on. Like, we can't figure out anything, and that's just not the way it is. And there are meditators who are Republicans and meditators who are Democrats. And so we've got to figure out how to cross that divide. And I think it does start by slowing down and saying, okay, what am I so mad about? And I get it, and there's a lot, I think, to be angry about, but there's also a lot to do.
Yes.
In local communities, there's a ton of stuff, innovations going on in schools and in the food movement and urban agriculture, and there's so many military families and veterans who need help and assistance. I mean, we're not, we can't expect just the president of the United States is going to fix all our problems, or the government in Washington is going to fix all our problems. I believe it can be a force for good, but at the same time, if it's not working, you can plug into your church and your school and be involved in your community to make things better.
Absolutely.
Not just throw your hands up and give up. I mean, that's the last thing we need right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's so tempting, but it is the last thing.
It is tempting. You want to pull your covers over your head in the morning and like, who's president today? And what did he tweet about? It can get you all riled up, but you got to stick with it. And what I'm trying to do now, and I think this is where the kind of the contemplation and mindfulness and awareness come in. It's like, if we just stop and look at what the challenges are in our country, it's staggering to think about what's happening in the world. I mean, we talked about the opiate problem in the country. Almost 50-some thousand people a couple years ago died. It's like the Vietnam War happening every year. You look at teen suicides, you look at veteran suicides, you look at globalization and automation and all the income inequality that's happened. You look at, climate change, 6 degrees Celsius in the next 70 years is going to increase. There's 3 billion more people moving into the middle class in the next 2 decades. Our food supply has to increase by 50%. I mean, it's staggering to think about it. And here we are because we're so distracted by a tweet or a news story that jacks our amygdala up and gets us all fired up about and in our fight or flight response, that we're literally not solving the problems challenges that we have, that will overwhelm us if we don't start dealing with them.
Yeah, I mean, what I tell people, well, first of all, I think you're totally right about everything, but can
you say that into the microphone again?
Yeah, I think he is completely right.
Yeah, somebody
if
write
only
that
I
down.
lived in Ohio,
Get
then
that
I
out
could vote for him, which I would
Get that
do.
to the New York Times.
But instead, since I don't live in Ohio, maybe I just have to go campaign for him and help him in any way I can, because you're totally right. Sometimes I ask people, in terms of going local, I say, who's your state senator? And they don't even know they have one.
Yeah.
It's just something that has gotten lost in the fabric of our political discourse. And I say, don't you realize that you have to vote for everybody? You have to vote for sheriff. You have to vote for, you have to participate in every election and go local. There's someone who needs you. And I have some friends who I had a family, and this is before the last presidential election, where I said to the young boy, how old are you? And he said, I'll be 18 soon. And I said, oh, you can vote. And then there was like silence at the table. And then later the dad said to me, well, we don't vote. I said, you've got to vote. You've got to vote. And I said, a common thing to say is, well, they're not that different, the two candidates, or they're just different on the margins. And I said, there are a lot of people who live on those margins. Mm-hmm. You may not feel you're going to be affected, although look what happens. Mm-hmm. But, when you're talking about a slight increase in minimum wage, that means something to somebody, and you can't just let it go. And in every election, in however small it seems, school board, all of it. And then based on that, you can tell I'm extremely passionate about voting. And so something I feel like I've done is, like, in this kind of pressured time, I've had to say, okay, that is my issue. That's where I'm, not that I don't care about anything else, obviously. It'd be really sad to, go to the polling place and have the earth explode from within due to heat. But, it's like, I'm going to just pour my heart into what I'm really passionate about. And that kind of saves me in a way. Because I feel like, okay, I'm taking whatever kind of agitated feelings I have, and I'm turning them to action. And I'm practicing trying to be one-pointed and clear and, have a good motivation and a sense of compassion in what I do. And I think when you just try to take it all in, and you're not putting your energy in any one place or whatever places really move you, it is so overwhelming.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it's, it's not like you got to save the world. I mean, you just got to, that's what the whole move coming out of World War II and that generation was like, okay, these young kids are going to go to the Peace Corps and Vista and teach, and, everyone's going to do their thing. Maybe go into science and help the country land on the moon, or, design new planes, and there's a huge aerospace boom. And I mean, it was just like there was something for everybody. Just go out and do it, and then we've lost that kind of, there's a role for everybody. Well, who's paying for that? The government's paying for that. And like, oh, are we really having this conversation? Like, yeah, I mean, the government's going to pay for certain things, and private sector pays for other things, and together we build an economy that works for everybody, and unions are strong, and people are making a good wage and all of that. It can happen again, but we've gotten this whole attitude. I mean, you think about it from a deeper level about the whole anti-government sentiment in the country. And it's like, that's our vehicle for collective action. No. Like, that's us.
That's right. That is us.
So you can dislike it, but, like, you don't want to hate yourself, because we're all part of that, whether you vote or don't vote. And that mentality, unfortunately, is still living with us. And it went from a sunny Ronald Reagan, the government is the problem and I'll help make it better, to, like, where we are now. This has been a 30-year arc, and it ends, I think, like it ends, because then it's like, well, who hates the government more? And now you're getting candidates who will shut down the government, who say the government shouldn't pay their past debts that we have, which would cause all kinds of problems, or every government program is bad. And then look, like, okay, I'm not saying Medicare is the most efficient program. We have a bill to like cut waste, fraud, and abuse. As a Democrat, I'm one of the few people that talk about it. But it's like Medicare provides health care for senior citizens and lifted them out of poverty. You know, when they, insurance companies can't make money off of covering old, sick people.
I'm so glad.
I mean, so we had to come up with a system like, okay, what are we going to do with our parents and grandparents when they get older? Well, we're going to have to create a Medicare-style program where we all chip in when we're healthy, and then when you're older, 80% of your health care is covered by this program. Now, it's not perfect, but like, let's fix it. But like some of these guys say, we don't want to kill it. We just want to get it small enough we can put it in a bathtub and drown it. Like, it's like, okay, that's not helpful. Like, and let's argue about how to fix it. We may have this idea on one side, this idea on the other side, but it's like, that's collective action. That was us solving a problem. Yeah. Medicaid for the poor, and heating assistance for people in New England and Ohio when it gets cold in the winter and they don't have enough money and their heating bill goes up. Like, don't we want to help those people? Because tomorrow it could be you. I mean, that's the sense of citizenship is, we're here to not waste money, but we're in this together as citizens.
So we do have to find one another again, because if we don't have that sense of the whole, of the collection, of us. Yeah. If it's almost like self and other and us and them, we're really in big trouble.
Yeah. I'm really big on national service. I think we have got to get to a point where, every kid, has to do something, and if you do it for a year, you get 2 years of community college or college. If you do it for 2 years, we'll give you 4 years. I mean, just to go out and meet people and get connected and serve. We are social beings who need to connect at a deep social level and help each other get along. And I think we need to reestablish that, because it's getting so, kids are on their phone, kids don't look in the eye, kids don't shake your hand, kids are losing the social skills, the ability to talk and work problems out. I think we've got to have an act that says, look, you got to go out and interface with people, and then you start to recognize the connection and the interconnection.
It's like other kinds of people too,
Yeah. White people go meet black people and brown people and learn about their culture and their religion. And, rich people go, meet poor people, and poor people go meet rich people. And the debate today is like, all poor people are bad. One side says, all poor people, they're bad. They're on the dole, and, all the negative stereotypes that go with that. And then I think sometimes Democrats we hate rich people. Wait a minute. I mean, a lot of these people worked hard. They started their own business and they made a lot of wealth and they got rich. Like, that in and of itself is not a reason to hate somebody. Now, if you're greedy and you do self-dealing and you collapse the economy, you have to punish them, I think, But it's like, there shouldn't be they're bad because they're rich, or they're bad because they're poor. It's like, well, wait a minute. Doesn't it depend on who?
Right.
I know a lot of rich people that are nice guys, and I know a lot of rich people that aren't so nice, and vice versa. So this whole, again, it's seeing them, meeting them, getting over that fear, and getting reconnected.
Yeah, well, I think you're totally right, again, because, it almost doesn't matter what your ideology is. If you're caught in ideology, then we lose that human capacity. Like, for all the people who say to me, why did you go to that company to teach mindfulness? Because that's like heartless, that's the corporate world, or that's, people are just trying to use these practices to get ahead and be more efficient and be more inhumane in a way, to be more productive. And I don't like the word productive anyway, but I say, well, I have never gone into a company and had somebody say to me, how do I feel less and how do I be more soulless so I can be more productive and get ahead? They're all talking about their alcoholic brother or their kid they're worried about, or, they can't sleep at night because they're so stressed. And I said, people. That's the truth. But if you don't go there, it's so easy to have just a thought about somebody else. And so,
well, they need to be seen too. I mean, regardless of if you're poor, there's some lonely rich people who build a prison with their wealth around themselves and become very isolated, and then it turns into drugs and alcohol and all kinds of stuff because they're lonely and they're in bad shape. So this probably isn't in vogue to say as a congressman today, but like, we got to just stop judging everybody. Like, the older you get, the more it's like, look, we're all dealing with stuff. Family stuff, friends stuff, growing up stuff, work stuff. We all do it. We're all human beings running around the same earth. Like, we've all got these things that we're dealing with: heartache, tragedy, joy. We all go through the gamut, and we shouldn't be so judgmental of other people. It doesn't mean you can't evaluate and tell your kid not to talk to a stranger, but be smart about this. But there's just so much instantaneous judgment on everything, and it's just it's diminishing dialogue, our ability to communicate with each other. You see it on social media is the biggest example of kind of the worst case scenario, I think. Like, you got 140 characters to, when you're dealing with politics, you're dealing with like, okay, I'm going to explain my version of tax reform in 140 characters, or how we fix healthcare in 140 characters. And, I know half the people are going to be for it and half the people are going to scream and yell about it. Like, that's not really a discussion. These are tools to help us communicate, but we get in these default positions where, I go on Fox News a lot. And a lot of Democrats don't go on Fox News, but I kind of like it, And I go on with these guys, and I, dust it up with them, and I don't know what, I may be sick, but I kind of like it, and so we'll get followers that are Fox News devotees, and so Fox News will tweet out something that I was on, and then they get my Twitter handle, and then they follow me, and then they're off to the races, right? So now they're following my Twitter on every day. So, and it's just so funny to see how they react to every little thing that I say. Like, I could not say one thing right. Be like, I cut the grass, and I swept the garage, and I washed my wife's car, I babysat the kid, and I made him a birthday cake myself. And they would find something wrong with like what I did that day. What do you? How come you're not working on legislation? But yeah, you find something to like, and so you just gotta like, it's can't take that stuff personal, but it's just an example of the hyper partisanship and just the knee jerk, immediate on both sides, and I think people are getting exhausted from it, which is why Sharon to the rescue. It's just like slow down. Like, okay, time out. You think about, I just think about like riding my bike down. My grandparents, they lived about 2 blocks from me growing up, and I'd ride the bike down there, and they had the old big band music radio station on. They were praying the rosary. I'd walk in, there'd be some good. They were Italian, so there was always something cooking, a lot of garlic, and I could smell it. And I was like, they had a garden. It was like they weren't inundated like we are with information and opinions and people telling us how to think about things and what our opinion should be about things. And it was just like, man, when the country was more agrarian and farming, and it was like, look, there are 3 TV stations, maybe none, going back 100 years or so. The radio, fireside chats, the president would come on and talk to the country, and it's like, man, it sounds so relaxing. I mean,
it does.
Like, I'm gonna work my garden, farm a little bit. I mean, obviously it was hard work, but it was just a quieter time. It was a quieter time.
Yes, it's a spiritual crisis all around, and like and all kinds of levels. I think the statistic. Someone Googled it for me the other day. I think the statistic in America was that something like 72% of people said that they were lonely.
Oh my goodness.
So
whoa,
it's a big number.
That's a big number. 3/4.
So maybe we do have to, just more and more for these skills, or some skills, so that people can slow down and have some sense of appreciation for what is, and just get a little calmer, because it is frantic, and the reductionistic tendency is also really true. I saw you quoted somewhere on Twitter, and it didn't sound like, I thought he didn't really say that. So I went back to Morning Joe, which was the show you were on, to hear what you actually said. In that in that way.
On the tax, on the corporate tax.
I don't remember what it was. It was something I thought, I didn't think so. And then when I heard it, of course, it was a much more nuanced, fuller. But then I thought, oh God, you have to check out everything. It's like, you can't just say, oh, I'm all riled up.
Somebody tell me why. Well, in the lonely piece, I'd be interested in your opinion on, what do you tell somebody that's lonely? What do you say? I mean, we were just meeting the other day with the postal workers, letter carriers, and they were just talking about how on their route in Youngstown, they see a lot of old people, and their interaction that they have with the letter carrier is the only interaction every single day that senior citizen will have. And I just thought, geez, oh man, that's your 72%. Right there. I mean, what do you tell somebody who's lonely? I mean, what do you say to them?
Well, I mean,
as a teacher.
I mean, I think there's a certain connection to oneself and to the world, just a sense of life, that we can really develop. And structurally, it doesn't exist. It used to be, maybe they would be part of a town that would be more integrated in terms of age, and there'd be more respect, as you said, toward a senior citizen. But
families living together.
And
generational.
And there's something you could do. You're offering. You're not just receiving. It's not just a kind of charity thing that somebody comes to visit you, but you have the wisdom of the years you've lived. You've probably let go of a lot. You've seen a lot, and that was more solicited. So to understand, part of the problem is not of your making. Part of the problem is the way society has kind of degenerated in a way. And I would find a thing that you care about, and even if it's a letter to the editor, that is your action. You can take some action, or be of help, in some way. Coach somebody, help a kid read, something like that. And if you can, if that kind of situation evolves. But basically, I think it's connecting to yourself in a different way, so you don't feel so left out, that there's a fuller sense of contact and connection from your side, in doing that. And people get it, I know technology is a really mixed bag, and but I've seen people's parents, friends' parents getting turned on to email, and suddenly they're like, wow, I have a pen pal in, some other part of the world. Facebook.
See the grandkids' pictures and all that.
And to whatever extent that can serve, I think it's really a good thing. It's connection. It's all about connection, and they have some wisdom. I shouldn't say that. I should say we, since I am getting on in years. But there is wisdom to impart and to share. It's tough though, because the structures don't exist. Where I mean, if we had national service, for example, then there would be somebody visiting those people. And maybe talking to them in a sincere way, to learn from them, as well as bring them a meal or
Right.
or whatever it is.
Cut their grass or
Yeah, and get that recipe from them, and like, begin to understand that, life didn't always look this particular way.
Yeah. Yeah. Give them some perspective.
But now, it's a shameful thing to get older in this country. And, so maybe another effort is to really, try to turn that around in terms of media and so on, because now I am older. And
you want the media to change
I want to be honored. I did qualify. I had a major birthday this year. I qualified for a certain card with different kind of health insurance. But I'm thinking about it. I was in England with a friend of mine a couple of years ago, so we were both like over 60 at that point. And we went to some state park or national park or something, and they had a senior discount. So my friend asked for 2 tickets at that discounted rate, and the guy just handed them to her. And she was really upset. She said, "You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to say, 'No way, madam, are you over 60? So why are you trying to pull one off,
Right.
Show me some ID." And he was a lovely gentleman, immediately said, "Yes, show me some ID." You're right, and so, of course we were worthy of that discount. So there's a lot of culture to change too in terms of respect and understanding. It's not really a shameful thing. It's pretty great.
Yeah. Well, we're all going to do it.
Hopefully.
Yeah, God willing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's, again, it all kind of gets back to the disconnection.
Yeah.
And if that's kind of like an underlying, or connection is an underlying principle for us as we govern ourselves.
Yeah.
How we build our communities, for example.
Yeah.
More walkable, more connected to the downtown, to the river walk, and have an amphitheater and facilities where we can experience entertainment together, and the restaurants. I mean, you see it happening in some downtown communities where you don't need a car. Public transit, even in suburbs, they're developing downtown areas in the suburbs.
That's nice.
It's great, and people like it, and it's relaxing, and it's about community, and it's the old, like, as an Irishman, I say the pub, it was a public house. It's where you would go, and that's where everybody socialized, and got together. And
you have 2 very convivial lineages of the Italians and the Irish.
You have no idea. You want to talk therapy? Okay.
Sure, when we're offline.
We'll start with the Italian side, and then we'll go to the Irish side. Very, very festive people.
Yes.
Very festive people. So, it's about figuring out how, as we have to rebuild these communities, how are we going to do it?
How are we going to do it differently?
And it was like, everything after World War II was, how do we move to the suburbs? Roads, water lines, sewer lines, mortgage deductions, housing assistance. There were programs to convert farmland into entertainment. People would take that and, do golf courses in the suburbs and country clubs and all that stuff. And everything moved out. And I think now there's a real need, both because of the population increase, but also a spiritual need of getting reconnected.
Yeah.
And how do we do that and put things back downtown? And that's what millennials want, and that's what baby boomers want. As they're getting a little bit older, they want to maybe ditch the car too, or at least one of the cars. And how do we walk around? And, kind of tone it down a little bit.
So great.
So I see the same thing with green space. Parks and urban parks and urban agriculture, so that's a connection to the earth and to nature, and more studies are coming online of how beneficial that is to just take a walk in the park, literally, and in the woods, and just kind of turn the phone off and get that connection. So you got your connection to each other, you got your connection to your environment, and at the end of the day, it all starts with the connection to yourself, as you articulated. Yeah. So it's about, and you just read, there's a great book called Sapiens. Have you read this book?
I have not read it. I heard he's a student of Goenka's. He meditates 2 hours a day.
Yeah, he's a 2-hour meditator. And I didn't know that when I read the book, and as I was reading it, I was like, this guy is an absolute meditator.
Yeah.
And then I didn't realize 2 hours a day, but makes sense. But the whole idea that as a species, as Homo sapiens, we are social. Like, we survive because of our ability to be connected to each other in environments where we're not the biggest, not the fastest, not the strongest, and it was our ability to communicate, our social skills, and obviously our brains developed more and more, and then our ability to think, but to share thinking, to share thoughts. Like, I went over there and there was a big bear. You know, if you go that way, just keep your eyes open and sharpen your spear, And so that's kind of like another fundamental thing. Like, we in order to survive, we have to be connected to each other in all kinds of different ways. And so the services of peace, social and emotional learning with Dan Goleman and Linda Lantieri and so many of our friends are doing in schools now. And you see the results. Tim Shriver was in. So Tim, who runs Special Olympics and also is chair of the board of CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. He was in town and he gave this presentation on social and emotional learning in the schools. And it's all about being connected. Like, the kids know each other's names, the kids share their personal stories, which are tough, their family situation, their neighborhood situation, all kinds of stuff. It very gently gets shared with the class. So anyway, he was going on about, it's like 11 percentile point increase in test scores, 10% increase in good behavior, 10% decrease in bad behavior. Teachers are happy. We're doing it in Youngstown and Warren City schools.
Fantastic.
And I was at an opening, we did it 5 years ago, and I go back and I check on a classroom, but we did the kickoff of the school year this year. These teachers are happy. They were cheering. I was like, we're all these terrorists that people are talking about, these teachers. Yeah. They were excited. They were energized. And so it gets back to, they were connected. Yeah. They get a little quiet time every day. They teach the kids the quiet time. They're connected with the kids. The kids are connected with them. Test score, they're moving. The state was in to take over the school. They're moving from like F grades on certain, evaluations to like C's and B's in the last couple of years. I mean, everything is trending in the right direction.
So great.
And everyone was happy.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is so amazing. But now I'm seeing the world through the Sapiens book now, and I'm thinking, it's the connection.
It's the connection.
But and unfortunately, we've got to kind of teach it, which was probably taught in homes with big 10, 12 kids, family, and a lot of fights along the way. But teaching that is essential. So you have the service component, you have social and emotional learning in the schools, give kids an opportunity to get connected. There's ways we can do this, even when you expand healthcare coverage to people who don't have it, where you're doing prevention and you have people teaching you, how to eat and what to eat, and your docs are more engaged rather than a drive-through. Here's a prescription. Good luck to you.
Right.
Address
and
the
you get
symptom.
Mental health help.
You get some mental health help. And mindfulness-based stress reduction maybe gets reimbursed. These kind of other alternative approaches where the doctor and the nurses are actually spending a little bit more time with their patients instead of the drive-through medicine that we have so much of now. But it all gets back to that principle of connection.
Yeah. It's
so
so
how do our policies evolve from this basic need that we have and understanding that we have? To me, that's
amazing. That's amazing. I usually at the end of, and I'm sure I have to go because you are very busy and you have all these other people waiting
for you. I'm not on book tour and podcast. I'm just trying to run a country here. Trying is the key word.
But usually I ask people if there's another word for love that they use, and I say mine is connection, but I think we've gotten there.
Yeah.
It's all about connection. I totally agree. And I think you're amazing in elaborating that into social policy, because that's what's governing our lives. That's what we weave together. And here we are, instead of thinking, wouldn't it be nice, let's create a world that actually reflects that.
And everyone's got to be a part of it. It's hit me in the last few months. Like, you just can't, even with President Obama, it's It's like, you can't do everything. Like, we
Yeah.
are citizens of this country. We all have some stake in responsibility, and you can't just say, well, and Democrats are famous for this, like, we're going to elect this president, and we fall in love with this president, whoever it is, we're going to fall in love, and they're going to just make everything right, and I'm going to go back to, eating vegan, or whatever it is we do. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
No. That has not worked out well for us.
Yeah.
It hasn't worked out well for the country. Lots of work to do.
Yeah.
And everybody's got to, obviously you got kids and people are busy, and there'll be periods of your life where you're going to be dedicated. And that is the most important thing you could do for the country is raise good kids that are, connected and sane and happy. So stay focused on that, but then as time frees up.
And then vote.
And then certainly vote and pay a little bit of attention, and then teach your kids how to vote and take them to the polls with you and raise good civically minded kids. But I just remember growing up, and my grandfather was an usher at church. He ran the beer tent at the festival, my Italian grandfather. And he was very involved with his union. Other than that, he would help build the school, very civically minded in every aspect. That was a part of it. My grandmother was the Rotary Club, and my grandmother ran the campaign for her boss, who was the sheriff in the county. They were all involved, and it was like that was just a part of the thing. You're an usher at the church. I mean, that's what you do. You help out at the festival, and you help out and volunteer, and and it was just, we got to get that back. That generation had it. That World War II generation, Depression, war, post-war. It was all like, we're in this together. There ain't no getting out of it, and we've got to get that connection back.
I completely agree. Wow.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat with us today. The work you're doing is truly inspiring, and I, for one, feel very lifted up by your approach to politics and social change. To find out more about Congressman Tim Ryan's work, visit www.timryan.house.gov, and I highly recommend his book, A Mindful Nation.
Thank you for listening. For more information about Sharon's many offerings and her teaching schedule, please visit her website at SharonSalzberg.com.